In an unlikely romance, Russia and South Africa are cozying up to each other while Ukraine is burning. Back in 2022, the African Union took a vow of neutrality. Instead of condemning Moscow's brutality in Kiev, many states chose to remain silent on the matter. Now, a year later, South Africa is transporting arms and ammunition to Russia to facilitate its aggressive campaign in Ukraine. And the US isn't pleased. In this video, we're breaking down why South Africa chose Russia as its strategic ally, how the US ambassador exposed Ramaphosa's complicity in the Ukraine war, and finally, the future of diplomatic ties between Washington and Cape Town. Before we get started, like this video and subscribe to our channel for the latest geopolitical news. For years, the United States of America has struggled to gain diplomatic momentum within the African Union. Without question, a diplomatic failure of the West is Russia's automatic win. It's bizarre, unexplainable, and even oddly suspicious. But the African Union, and South Africa in particular, have a striking affinity for Vladimir Putin and his maddening ways to rule the world. Both of the countries don't have any regional commonalities or strategic political coalitions. They speak very different languages. Their culture couldn't be more strikingly different. And they don't have a legacy of fighting any wars together. Yet in South Africa's multilateral approach to navigating its geopolitical standing, Russia always seems to take the cake. It's a love affair that seems very unlikely, yet it has continued to thrive against all odds. When Russia declared war on Ukraine in 2022, the world expected South Africa to make a bold statement to condemn Putin's barbarism. After all, for years, the African state has vouched for pacifist policies that don't infringe on people's agency and their right to life. That bit hasn't changed even today. But when it came down to condemning the war in Ukraine, South Africa chose to stay neutral in the matter. From a geopolitical standpoint, it is true that the African states don't have significant political sway to deter Russia from its military campaign. But then again, South Africa's silence on Putin's war crime was almost deafening. The country also made its stance pretty clear-cut in the United Nations General Assembly as well. When the UNGA moved forward to pass a unanimous resolution condemning Russia's ambitions in Ukraine, South Africa chose to abstain. Sure, it was very much in line with its fellow peers from the African Union, but the country's ambassador had made a statement on seeking peace, and nothing says peace more than abstaining from voting on an anti-war UN resolution, right? South Africa's failure to condemn its traditional ally for its war crimes was met with heavy criticism. Some experts even questioned why Putin has one of the most powerful African nations under its spell. While there are multiple reasons for this irrational romance, strategic economic cooperation isn't one of them. If anything, South Africa has a higher degree of economic ties with the West than it has ever with Russia. As it stands today, the United States of America and the European Union account for 1/3 of South Africa's imports, while Russian imports amount to a measly 0.4% in the best-case scenario. Now, by all means, South Africa should strategically prioritize its biggest trading partners, considering its limited homegrown economic capacity. Yet it chooses to remain fixated on Moscow. Many IR experts believe this particular maneuver could be costly for South Africa in the long run. In the meanwhile, the African state aims to change the status quo by attributing overwhelming support to Russia. You see, for the South African president, Cyril Ramaphosa, the infatuation with Putin isn't romanticism, it's strategic. The unconditional support towards the Russian cause is about revoking the hegemonic influence of the United States. In the pursuit of a fairer world, South Africa wants to support another strong regional actor, even if it comes at the expense of a major shift in its foreign policy. When it comes to Ukraine, it seems like South Africa is abandoning its neutral stance to actively fuel support for the Kremlin. Finding the video informative? Subscribe to our channel. It's a move that no one saw coming, but then again, war is hardly ever neutral. A year after Russia's infiltration of Ukraine, the tides are changing. The war doesn't seem to end. In fact, experts believe that territorial conflict would spill into the year 2024 as well. And if that's proven to be true, the results would be disastrous for Putin, who's losing an internal war to his intelligence agency as the country's resources run thin. It's natural that Russia is scrambling for more military aid and strategic alliances to support its guerrilla warfare in Ukraine. As Moscow finds itself detached from focal political alliances, it is looking for support in the unlikeliest of places, and it seems like it has found a major helping hand in South Africa. So, what's happening? In May 2023, the U.S. ambassador to South Africa, Ruben Brigidi, reported that Cyril Ramaphosa's government is secretly arming Russia to continue its aggressive campaign in Ukraine. While the details of this geopolitical turmoil were still sketchy, Brigidi went public with the information, and that, of course, was bound to make South Africa upset. Yet it had a bigger fight in front of it. As per Ambassador Brigidi's report, South Africa was secretly loading arms and ammunition in Lady R, a Russian cargo ship docked at Simonstown. Even though the operation was carried out in early December, the U.S. investigation could only confirm the loading of weapons later on. In the case this instance is true, as far as the United States is concerned, South Africa has effectively breached its neutrality clause to support a war criminal, and the economic implications of crossing America could be huge. In the aftermath of the war in Ukraine, Washington has routinely warned its trading partners for supporting Russia. At the end of the day, the U.S. holds influence over the most important international markets. If it was to revoke South Africa's access to imports and financial markets, the country will take a severe economic toll. And let's just say, the U.S. had warned South Africa multiple times about offering any type of helping hand to Moscow. In a revolting statement, the ambassador said, "The arming of the Russians is extremely serious, and we do not consider this issue to be resolved." In response, Ramaphosa only initiated an independent tribunal to look into the claims made by the United States of America. Their version of events implicates the government for supporting Vladimir Putin as he continues to create havoc in Ukraine, and by the looks of it, Ramaphosa is faltering hard on the matter. Because here's the thing. The preliminary investigation shows that the docked cargo ship belonged to a sanctioned Russian company. Back in 2022, the U.S. had sanctioned Lady R for transporting and collecting military equipment for Moscow. The fact that the ship was docked right under Ramaphosa's nose is deeply concerning and ignorant. So, it was almost inevitable that the president would find himself in hot waters. And let's just say, his political opposition is having a field day. So far, President Ramaphosa hasn't substantially answered his opposition and the United States of America, and his turmoil has just begun. In February 2023, South Africa participated in joint naval exercises with China and Russia. The government relentlessly convinced the U.S. that military drills were just a routine, friendly, collaborative initiative. And overall, the country was still neutral about the war in Ukraine. With the recent info on Lady R and its devious rerouting in Simonstown, South Africa's neutrality case is falling apart. Virtually, Ramaphosa green-signaled military exercises with a war criminal and its biggest ally, China. Now, IR experts are pretty baffled about this entire ordeal. You see, the war in Ukraine has caused significant economic harm in South Africa. Its imports tally skyrocketed exponentially, and the country was on the brink of extreme food insecurity. So, if anything, the normalization of Europe is in the best interest of the country. But Ramaphosa had a different plan, one that involved siding with the emerging leader of the New World Order. Optimistic, right? As Russia and China lead global efforts to de-dollarize the global financial markets, South Africa is ready to offer its allyship. Yet Ramaphosa's trajectory won't be hassle-free. What's really important right now is the BRICS convention, scheduled to take place in August in South Africa. Putin has already RSVP'd the invitation, and while he is fighting a war, he wants to make a statement in front of his rivals. Russia can multitask like a pro. If the convoy from Moscow attends the BRICS convention, South Africa is under a diplomatic obligation to arrest Putin. You heard that right. Back in March, the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for the Russian president for forcefully deporting Ukrainian children to Russia. The gravitas of the crime is huge, and South Africa is under immense pressure to execute the arrest on behalf of the ICC. It's clear that Ramaphosa Ramaphosa wouldn't make this highly dangerous move, yet at the same time, his country is creating a diplomatic dilemma. So, for the United States, that would be strike number 2. After deploying weapons for Moscow, defying the ICC will undermine Washington-Cape Town relations. And as history indicates, the US isn't kind to its transgressors. Are we looking at a new sanctions regime for South Africa? Definitely. Found this video insightful? Give it a like and subscribe to our channel for more news on geopolitics.